My name's Raelynn. I'm 32, and last night, at my parents' house, they stood up during my brother's engagement party and handed him a check for $2.5 million. Then my mom looked straight at me and said, "You're a failure." I froze right there, holding my glass of water, pretending not to break. But Grandma Rose saw everything. Where are you watching from? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about family drama and emotional courage. I never thought a single evening could split a family in half, but that night at my parents' house, it did. The laughter, the music, the smell of honey-glazed ham, all of it felt warm, fake, and hollow at the same time. The kind of warmth that doesn't reach your heart, just your skin. It was a Saturday evening in late June. The house looked like something out of a magazine. Twinkling lights draped over the backyard, crystal bowls full of fruit, and a jazz playlist humming softly through the speakers. My parents loved to host parties. It wasn't about celebrating family, it was about showing off. I wore a pale blue dress I'd bought 2 years ago for a friend's wedding. My mom had told me not to overdo it, since the party was for Tyler, my younger brother, the golden boy. He'd just landed another big real estate deal, and apparently, that made him the family's pride again. I'd parked down the street because the driveway was already full of shiny cars. As I walked toward the house, I remember staring at all those expensive SUVs and sedans and thinking, every single one of them was here for Tyler. Inside, everyone looked perfect. Dad was greeting guests like a politician. Broad smile, confident handshake. Mom fluttered around him like his campaign manager, making sure no one's drink went empty. Tyler stood near the buffet, laughing too loudly, his fiancée Madison, clinging to his arm. She was beautiful, I'll give her that, but she had the same polished look my mother loved, expensive nails, fake tan, that constant smile that never reached her eyes. I spotted Grandma Rose sitting quietly near the corner, wrapped in her cream shawl. Her silver hair caught the light. She wasn't smiling, but she was watching everyone, like she was trying to memorize something. "Raelynn, you made it." Mom's voice cut through the noise. She air-kissed me, never actually touching my cheek. "You look comfortable." I smiled because that's what I always did. "Thanks, Mom. The place looks nice." "Tyler's big night," she said proudly. "We're just so thrilled for him. He's worked so hard. He deserves everything coming his way." That last sentence hung between us like a loaded gun. I nodded, keeping my voice even. "Yeah, he's lucky." I found Grandma Rose's eyes again from across the room. She gave me the smallest smile, the kind that said, "I see you, sweetheart. I see everything." Dinner passed in a blur. Dad gave his usual toast about family values and legacy, words that sounded nice but meant nothing. Tyler laughed at his own stories, and everyone followed like a choir. I picked at my food and tried not to count how many people avoided making eye contact with me. Then came the moment that would burn itself into my memory forever. Dad stood, clinking his glass with a spoon. "If I could have everyone's attention," he said, his voice booming with pride. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating Tyler's accomplishments, it's about family." People cheered softly, expecting another one of his long, self-congratulatory speeches. But this time, he pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Your mother and I have been thinking a lot about the future," Dad continued. "We want to invest in it. And who better to invest in than the son who's proven himself time and time again?" I froze. The words didn't sound right. He turned to Tyler and handed him the envelope. Tyler took it, grinning, shaking his head in fake surprise. Mom placed her hand over her heart. $2.5 million, she announced, her voice trembling with pride. "To help you expand your real estate company. We know you'll make us proud." The room erupted in applause. Tyler hugged them both, pretending to act humble. "You guys, wow. I don't even know what to say." My heart felt like it had dropped straight to the floor. I sat perfectly still, staring at that envelope like it was radioactive. And then Mom's voice sliced through the clapping. She looked right at me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You see, Raelynn? This is what happens when you work hard. When you don't give up. Not everyone can be a success story, but that's okay." There it was. My humiliation, gift-wrapped and served to the crowd. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. I forced a smile so tight it hurt. My hands were trembling under the table. "Mom," I said softly, "was that really necessary?" She blinked, pretending not to understand. "What do you mean, honey? We're just celebrating success. You should be happy for your brother." "I am," I said, just not sure why it had to come with a public lecture. Dad cleared his throat. "Let's not make this about jealousy, Raelynn." I wanted to scream, but instead I stood up, smoothing my dress. "Excuse me," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "I need some air." I walked out before anyone could stop me. The cool evening breeze hit my face like a slap. The backyard lights twinkled against the dark sky. I could still hear the laughter behind me. Laughter that felt like knives. I walked to the far end of the yard, near the old oak tree, and leaned against it, taking deep breaths. My chest ached. Every childhood memory flashed through my mind. School plays they never came to, birthdays they forgot, Tyler's trophies that always got a shelf while mine ended up in boxes. That's when I heard soft footsteps behind me. "Sweetheart," Grandma Rose's voice said gently. I turned. She stood there, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. "I saw what happened," she whispered. "Yeah," I said bitterly, wiping my eyes. "Hard to miss." She came closer. "You didn't deserve that, Raelynn. Not one bit." I shrugged, trying to sound braver than I felt. "It's not new, Grandma. They've always loved Tyler more. I just didn't think they'd prove it with a check." Grandma's eyes softened. "They think money measures worth. They always have." Her words sank deep. I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" But before she could answer, Mom's voice called from the patio. "Mother, there you are. Everyone's looking for you." Grandma squeezed my hand before turning back toward the lights. "We'll talk tomorrow," she whispered. "Come see me." And then she was gone, swallowed back into that bright, noisy world I no longer belonged to. I stayed outside for a long time, watching the party through the window like a stranger. Tyler was showing off the check to a group of guests. Mom beamed. Dad looked proud. They were living their picture-perfect dream. And I was just the smudge on the frame. Eventually, I slipped back in to grab my purse. On my way out, I overheard Tyler laughing with Madison near the dessert table. "Can you believe they actually did it?" he said. "Dad said it was from their own savings, but I'm pretty sure he pulled from Grandma's account. Whatever. Free money." Madison giggled. "You're bad." Tyler smirked. "Hey, if they're dumb enough to hand it over, I'm not saying no." I froze. My stomach twisted. Grandma's account? What did that even mean? I stepped out into the night, my mind spinning. The air felt colder now. The street was empty except for my old Honda parked under the flickering streetlight. I sat inside for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel. My phone buzzed. A text from Grandma Rose. "Come by tomorrow morning. Alone." I stared at those words until they blurred. I didn't know what she was planning to tell me, but deep down, I felt something shift. The party that was supposed to celebrate success had exposed something much darker. And I had no idea that the real story, the truth Grandma was holding, was about to change everything I thought I knew about our family. I started the engine, wiped my tears, and drove away, leaving behind the music, the lights, and the people who had just sold their souls for applause. The next morning, sunlight spilled through my blinds, sharp and intrusive, dragging me out of a restless sleep. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Grandma Rose. "Don't tell anyone you're coming." No good morning, no explanation. Just that. I sat up, staring at the words, my stomach knotted tight. I hadn't told anyone about her first text, not even my roommate, Lila. Still, something about the way Grandma had written it made my chest tighten. It wasn't like her to sound urgent. By the time I got dressed and grabbed my keys, the sky had shifted from gold to gray. A storm was gathering somewhere in the distance. The drive to Grandma's house took 40 minutes, long enough for my mind to run through every possible scenario. Had Tyler done something to her account? Had Dad? Or was it just another misunderstanding twisted into paranoia? But deep down I knew better. Grandma Rose didn't panic. She was the calm in every storm this family ever had. If she was worried, something was truly wrong. When I pulled into her driveway, the familiar sight of her little white house felt different, quieter, heavier. The curtains were drawn, the porch light still on even though it was morning. I knocked softly. "Grandma? It's me." The door creaked open almost instantly. She stood there, dressed in her robe, her silver hair pinned back neatly, eyes sharp despite the weariness on her face. "You came," she said, her voice low. "Of course. You sounded. Come in." She didn't let me finish. She closed the door behind me, locking it with a deliberate click. The air inside smelled like lavender and old books. A kettle whistled faintly in the kitchen. Grandma moved slower than usual, but there was purpose in every motion. "Sit down," she said, gesturing to the living room. "We need to talk before anyone comes looking." "Looking?" I repeated, uneasy. "Grandma, what's going on?" She lowered herself onto the couch, hands trembling slightly as she poured 2 cups of tea. "I should have told you sooner, but I kept hoping your parents would do the right thing." My pulse quickened. "This is about the money, isn't it? The 2.5 million? Her eyes darkened. "It's not just that." She paused, gathering herself. "It's about everything they've taken from me, from you, from this family." I frowned, not understanding. "You think they stole from you?" She gave a humorless laugh. "Not think, sweetheart. I know." I sat there, stunned. "Grandma, that's serious." "So is betrayal," she whispered. The word sliced through the room like a blade. She reached beside the couch and pulled out a small metal box, the kind people used to keep letters or jewelry in. The latch clicked open, revealing stacks of papers, photographs, and envelopes. "I started keeping records years ago," she said quietly. "After your grandfather passed, your father insisted on managing my accounts. Said it would be easier for me. I trusted him." Her voice cracked. "He moved my investments, my savings, everything, into joint accounts. Said it was just for convenience. And little by little, the balances shrank." I blinked, trying to process it. "Wait, so Dad's been taking what wasn't his," she said flatly. "And now, it seems he's funneled what's left to your brother." I felt sick. "Are you sure? Maybe there's some mistake." "No mistake." She handed me a folder. "Look for yourself." Inside were bank statements, some yellowed with age, all neatly labeled. I flipped through them, heart pounding. The numbers didn't lie. Large transfers from Grandma's accounts to one under Dad's name. Then smaller ones to Tyler's business fund. Each page was like a punch to the gut. "How long has this been happening?" I asked quietly. "Years," she said. I confronted him once, but he told me I was confused, that I'd signed off on it. I closed the folder, my hands shaking. "Did you?" She looked straight into my eyes. "I may be old, but I'm not blind, and I'm certainly not stupid." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I finally asked. "Because I didn't want to drag you into it," she said. "You've been through enough." But last night, when I saw them announce that money, like it was theirs to give. Her voice trembled with quiet rage. That was my breaking point. I swallowed hard. "So what now?" Grandma leaned back, her gaze sharp and steady. "Now, I need your help." "Me? You're the only one who won't lie to me," she said simply. "I want you to find out what they've done, how much, where it's gone, and why they needed it so badly. I can't trust anyone else." The air felt heavy, charged. "Grandma, I don't even know where to start." "You're smarter than they think," she said. "Start where all secrets live, in the details." Her words stayed with me even as I left her house later that morning. The storm had finally broken, rain pelting my windshield as I drove home. My mind was a blur of questions, anger, and disbelief. How could Dad do that to her? To us? And why had no one noticed? That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grandma's trembling hands, the folder full of proof, the look of betrayal on her face. Around midnight, I opened my laptop. I typed in the name of Tyler's company, Harlan and Ridge Properties. The website was flashy, filled with photos of luxury condos and smiling families. But something about it felt off. I dug deeper. Public filings, property records, company registrations. It didn't take long to find the pattern. Multiple shell companies, fake listings, inflated property values. He wasn't just investing, he was laundering. My breath caught. I cross-checked a few addresses. 2 of them led back to properties owned by my father's business network. Another was registered under a trust with my grandmother's maiden name. My hands went cold. They were using her identity. The next morning, I drove back to her house, half running up the porch steps. She opened the door before I could knock. "I found something," I said breathlessly. Her eyes sharpened. "Come in." I showed her everything. The shell companies, the fake listings, the trust under her name. She listened silently, nodding once in a while. When I finished, she leaned back slowly. "So it's worse than I thought. Grandma, this is criminal." "Yes," she said calmly. "And they think no one will ever catch them." I looked at her, realizing something. She wasn't scared. She was preparing. "What are you planning to do?" I asked. Her lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Make them tell the truth. In their own words." I frowned. "How?" "I've already started," she said. "That party last night wasn't the first time your father flaunted money that wasn't his. I've been recording things for months, conversations, calls, meetings. I may not be young, but I'm not powerless." I sat there, stunned. Grandma Rose had always been gentle, quiet, but beneath that softness was steel. She stood up, walked to her old secretary desk, and opened a hidden compartment I never knew existed. Inside was a small voice recorder, a stack of labeled flash drives, and a sealed envelope. "Everything you'll need is here," she said. "But there's something you must promise me." "What?" "Whatever happens next, you protect yourself first. They've already taken enough from this family. I won't let them take you too." Her voice wavered, but her eyes didn't. I reached out, covering her hand with mine. "I promise." That evening, I sat alone in my car, parked down the street from my parents' mansion. The lights inside glowed softly through the rain. I watched silhouettes move behind the curtains, my parents, Tyler, Madison, all laughing again. They had no idea what was coming. I pressed play on the recorder Grandma had given me. Her voice filled the car, calm but trembling. March 4th, Harlan Estate Office. James discussing transfers to Tyler's accounts. My father's voice came next, muffled but clear enough to understand. "No one will question it. She's old. She won't even remember signing the documents." I stopped breathing. My hand clenched around the steering wheel. It wasn't just betrayal. It was manipulation, premeditated and cruel. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't wipe them away. I sat there for a long time, listening, letting the truth sink in. Grandma Rose wasn't just uncovering a secret. She was building a case. And now, I was part of it. When I finally drove home, the storm had passed. The streets shimmered with rain light, everything quiet except the faint hum of the engine. I thought about what she'd said, that she'd already started something. I realized then that Grandma Rose wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was preparing for war. And I had just agreed to fight beside her. The morning after everything changed, the air felt heavier. The world outside my window was quiet, still wet from last night's rain. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like getting up. My mind was still tangled in Grandma's voice, the recordings, and the cold truth about my parents. They hadn't just taken money, they'd taken trust. And trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild overnight. I made coffee but barely touched it. My apartment was small but cozy, the kind of place that usually made me feel safe. Now every tick of the clock echoed like a reminder. Nothing in my life was what it seemed. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed. A message from Grandma. "Meet me at the library. Bring the folder." No explanation, no emoji, just that same calm precision that had always made me listen. The local library was only a few blocks from her house. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a corner table near the back, her reading glasses perched low on her nose, a stack of notebooks beside her. She looked up and smiled faintly. "You came quickly." "Couldn't sleep," I admitted, sliding into the seat across from her. "Good. You'll need your focus today." I placed the folder on the table, its edges worn from all the times I'd opened and closed it in disbelief. "What are we doing here?" I asked. "Organizing," she said. "Truth is powerful, but only when it's clear. We need to make it undeniable. Dates, signatures, transactions, everything. If we want to expose them, we can't afford any mistakes. She said, we like it was the most natural thing in the world. We spent hours there. She sorted documents. I scanned and labeled each file into my laptop. Every so often, she'd stop to explain a piece of the puzzle. A conversation she remembered. A moment when she realized something wasn't right. At one point, she paused over an old photo of my father. He used to bring me flowers every Sunday, she said softly. Said he wanted to make sure I never felt alone after your grandfather passed. Her voice wavered. And all the while he was taking from me. I didn't know what to say, so I just reached over and squeezed her hand. That small gesture, the quiet human kind, became the start of something neither of us expected. Over the next few weeks, our routine changed completely. Every morning before work, I'd stop by Grandma's house. We'd go through more evidence, call banks, and file quiet requests for old records. In the evenings I'd come back and she'd cook simple meals, soup, cornbread, tea with honey, and we'd sit in her living room surrounded by papers and hope. We didn't talk much about revenge. We talked about rebuilding. Your parents took my security, she said one night. But they won't take my peace. That line stayed with me. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming what they'd tried to erase. Our dignity, our story, our truth. Still, the process wasn't easy. Each new discovery felt like reopening a wound. The financial betrayal was bad enough, but there were other things too. Hidden messages, secret phone lines, and legal papers my father had forged using Grandma's signature. Once, while going through a dusty envelope, I found a letter addressed to me, dated 2 years ago. It had never been delivered. Raelynn, if you're reading this, then I didn't get the chance to explain. I want you to know I believe in you. I always have. The world can be cruel to the honest ones. Stay strong. Love, Grandma. My throat tightened. Why didn't I get this? Grandma sighed. Your mother must have intercepted it. She started collecting my mail around that time, said it was to help me keep organized. I clenched my jaw. They controlled everything, didn't they? Not anymore, she said firmly. That's when the plan truly began. Quiet, steady, intentional. Grandma Rose contacted an attorney she trusted, an old friend named Ellen, who'd once helped her with property rights. Ellen was retired now, but agreed to review the evidence privately. When we met her, she sat across her kitchen table, glasses halfway down her nose, flipping through the documents with a frown. This is serious, Ellen said. And the amounts, my God, Rose, this isn't just unethical. It's fraud. Grandma nodded calmly. I don't want to destroy them. I just want the truth out. Ellen looked between us. Then you'll need proof that can stand in a courtroom. Grandma gestured toward me. That's where Raelynn comes in. Ellen smiled faintly. Good. Because you'll need her. And you'll both need patience. These things take time. That word, time, felt heavier than it should have. For months, I balanced two worlds. By day, I worked at the small design firm downtown, pretending everything was normal, smiling at coworkers, sitting through meetings about brand colors and ad campaigns. By night, I became something else entirely, a quiet investigator, combing through spreadsheets, tracking transactions, comparing dates and signatures. There was power in it, but also exhaustion. I'd stare at screens until my eyes burned, trying to piece together every hidden corner of my father's empire. Some nights I'd catch my reflection in the window and barely recognize myself. Tired eyes, cold determination. But Grandma kept me grounded. She'd call every night before bed, her voice calm and steady. Remember, sweetheart, truth doesn't shout. It whispers until someone's willing to listen. One evening, I brought her groceries and found her sitting at her piano, something she hadn't touched in years. She looked up and smiled softly. I used to play this for your mother when she was your age, she said, fingers brushing the keys. She'd sit right where you are now, humming along. I sat down quietly. What happened to her, Grandma? I mean, how did she turn into someone who could do this? She paused, eyes glistening. Greed doesn't show up wearing horns, Raelynn. It arrives looking like ambition. The note hung in the air, soft but sharp. That night, as I drove home, I realized what Grandma meant. This wasn't just a story about money. It was about what people become when they forget who they are. Weeks turned into months. The deeper we dug, the more dangerous it felt. Twice, I noticed unfamiliar cars parked near my building. Once, my father called out of the blue, his tone syrupy sweet. "Haven't heard from you in a while, Ray. Everything okay?" I lied easily. "Yeah, just busy." He chuckled softly. "That's my girl. Always trying to prove herself." My fingers tightened on the phone. Guess I learned from the best. He didn't catch the edge in my voice, or maybe he did, and it amused him. Either way, I hung up before he could say more. After that call, Grandma insisted we move some files to a safer place. We rented a small storage unit under my name. Nothing fancy, just a metal box in a quiet industrial lot. Inside, we kept duplicates of every document, every recording, every timeline. It was our insurance policy. One evening after locking up, I turned to Grandma. "Do you ever regret starting this?" She smiled faintly. "I regret trusting the wrong people, but I don't regret fixing what they broke." Her answer gave me strength, but it didn't erase the fear. The fear of losing her. The fear of what might happen if my father found out what we were doing. One rainy afternoon, I came by her house and found her sitting on the couch with a newspaper in her lap. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, then pointed to an article. "Local property developer under investigation for tax irregularities." Tyler's company name was buried halfway down the paragraph. I froze. "They're looking into him?" She nodded again. "The truth has a way of finding light." That night I didn't sleep much, but for the first time, it wasn't from fear. It was from hope. We didn't celebrate. We didn't call anyone. We just kept working quietly, tidying up what was left of the evidence, making sure every file was accounted for. That's why I called this part of my life the quiet rebuild. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was patient and painful and deeply real. We weren't just fixing finances. We were rebuilding faith. In ourselves, in honesty, in the idea that doing the right thing still mattered. Grandma's health began to decline that winter, but she never slowed down. Some nights she'd sit wrapped in her blanket, going through papers while I brewed tea. "Promise me something, Raelynn," she said one night. "Anything. When this is over, don't let bitterness be your legacy. Let truth be." I nodded, trying to blink back tears. "I promise." She smiled softly. "Good. Because revenge burns fast. But truth lasts." It took nearly a year to complete everything. By the end, we had compiled hundreds of pages of proof, bank statements, emails, recordings, and verified signatures. Ellen submitted the case quietly, avoiding publicity. When I dropped off the final stack of documents, the weight that lifted off my chest was indescribable. Driving home that evening, the sun was setting in a burst of orange and pink, peaceful, honest colors. Grandma's words echoed in my head. "Truth doesn't shout." And she was right. Our rebuild hadn't been loud or glamorous. But it was strong. I looked up at the fading sky, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, calm. For the first time since that awful night at the party, I wasn't defined by what my parents said I was. I wasn't a failure. I was proof that starting over quietly can be the loudest victory of all. The first real silence I noticed wasn't in my house. It was inside me. For weeks, I'd been learning to live differently, slower, softer, and less afraid of my own thoughts. But that night, the air carried a weight that made even my heartbeat sound too loud. Grandma's old piano sat in the corner of my living room. The one she'd left me, wrapped in a faded lace cover that smelled faintly of lavender and thyme. I hadn't touched it since she passed, maybe out of fear that the sound of those keys would make her absence too real. But something about that night pulled me toward it. I lifted the cover and ran my fingers over the dusted surface. One small note escaped, hesitant, cracked, but somehow alive. Then another. And before I knew it, my hands were playing the melody she used to hum when she baked pies, that soft tune that always meant you're home now. For a moment I was. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. "We need to talk. Mom's been asking questions about Grandma's letters." My stomach tightened. The letters, the ones Grandma Rose had hidden inside the lining of her jewelry box, The ones that revealed how she'd quietly transferred part of her estate to me without telling anyone. The night I found them had changed everything. I hesitated for a moment before replying. Not tonight. Please. He didn't respond, but I could already imagine his expression, that mix of confusion and irritation that had become our new normal. He thought I was hiding something. In truth, I was protecting more than just paper and ink. I was protecting her voice, her memory, and maybe in some quiet way myself. The next morning, I drove to the lake. The one Grandma used to take me to when I was little, where she said the water listens better than people do. I sat on the bench, clutching the worn leather envelope that held her letters. The sky reflected off the surface like a cracked mirror. The kind that shows truth even when you don't want to see it. Inside the envelope, one letter was still sealed. I'd read all the others except this one, the one marked for when you're ready to forgive. My fingers trembled as I opened it. My dearest Ray, if you're reading this, it means you've finally learned that silence isn't emptiness, it's truth taking shape. There are things your parents never told you, things I couldn't say while I was alive because I feared they'd twist them into something ugly. You deserve to know that what was taken from you was never just money. It was recognition. You were always meant to build your own kind of success, not theirs. And when they finally see what you've become, stay silent. Let silence speak for you. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. For the first time, I understood, Grandma hadn't just left me assets or advice. She'd left me a blueprint for peace. Later that afternoon, Daniel showed up at my door. No warning. No call. He looked exhausted, holding a small box in his hands. Can I come in? I nodded, stepping aside. He walked straight to the kitchen, placed the box on the counter, and said, I found this in Mom's attic. Inside were old photographs, family gatherings, birthdays, summer picnics. But beneath them was something else. A folded piece of parchment with Grandma's handwriting. To my children. I hope you never let envy destroy the beauty of what I built for all of you. Daniel looked up. She knew, he said quietly. She knew how bad things would get between us. I stayed silent. She didn't mean for us to fight over her, he continued, voice cracking slightly. I think she wanted us to fix what was broken long before she passed. His honesty disarmed me. It was the first time he'd spoken without blame, without that defensive tone. I poured him some tea and we sat in silence. For once, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was real. Days turned into weeks. I started rebuilding my life, not through grand gestures but in quiet choices. I began teaching piano to local kids on weekends. It wasn't much money, but it filled my days with laughter and small victories. I repaired Grandma's garden bench, the one with peeling white paint, and planted marigolds just like she did every spring. One afternoon, while watering them, I noticed a familiar figure walking up the path, my mother. Her steps were slower now, her face softer, but her eyes still carried that piercing sharpness that once could make me feel 10 years old again. I heard about the lessons, she said, her tone unreadable. Grandma would have liked that. Yeah, I replied cautiously. She would have. She glanced around the garden before adding, I didn't know she left you the piano. She didn't tell anyone, I said. Guess she wanted it quiet. A pause. Then surprisingly she smiled, a small, tired smile that looked like it had been hiding for years. She always knew what silence could do, she murmured. There it was, a flicker of understanding between us, fragile but present. That evening, I found myself at the piano again. For the first time, I wasn't just playing Grandma's melody, I was adding to it. My own notes, tentative but confident. My mother sat on the sofa, eyes closed, listening. When the last chord faded, she said softly, I never realized how much she saw in you. I should have. It wasn't an apology, but it was close enough. Maybe you still can, I said. She nodded, eyes glistening. Maybe I will. And just like that, something unspoken shifted. The silence between us didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like healing. A few days later, I took Grandma's last letter back to the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the early evening sky like glass. I knelt by the edge, holding the letter close before whispering, I forgive them. I think. I finally understand. The wind caught my hair, brushing it across my face. Somewhere deep inside, it felt like she was answering, not in words, but in that peaceful quiet she always left behind. I didn't need to speak anymore. Silence was enough. Back home, I noticed a missed call from Daniel. His voicemail was short but full of something new: gratitude. Hey Ray. I just wanted to say thanks for everything. I know things got messy, but I'm proud of you. Really. And I think Mom is too. Talk soon. I smiled, replaying it once before deleting it. Not because I didn't care, but because I no longer needed proof of peace. I was living it. Weeks passed, and with each sunrise, the world felt a little lighter. My home, once echoing with tension, now carried the gentle hum of piano notes, the laughter of children during lessons, and the faint scent of lavender from Grandma's old scarf hanging on the chair. Sometimes, when the evening light hit just right, I'd swear I could see her reflection in the piano's polished surface, smiling, calm, proud. That's when I finally understood her message. Truth doesn't always arrive in shouts, confrontations, or letters sealed in envelopes. Sometimes it's in the pauses between words, the quiet forgiveness that never needs to be said out loud. And in that silence, I found something I'd been chasing for years: peace that didn't demand explanation. The night ended the way most healing stories do, not with fireworks but with stillness. I sat by the window, looking out at the garden, the marigolds swaying softly under the moonlight. The same song I'd played earlier replayed in my mind, a blend of old and new, grief and grace. I whispered into the darkness, "Thank you, Grandma." No sound came back, but the silence that followed said everything. The moon hung low that night, a thin silver ribbon stretched across the sky. I stayed by the window long after the world went quiet, watching the marigolds sway beneath the faint glow of the porch light. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to fix anything. There was no battle left to fight, only the quiet hum of something new, something gentle taking root inside me. The next morning came softly. I woke to the smell of rain and the sound of children's laughter spilling from the front yard. 2 of my piano students were already waiting on the porch, their umbrellas tilted like colorful sails. I rushed to open the door, smiling despite the drizzle. "You're early." They grinned, breathless with excitement. "We wanted to show you the song we practiced." Inside, the piano gleamed in the dim light, the same one Grandma had left behind. The kids placed their small hands on the keys, and a clumsy but cheerful melody filled the room. Their notes were uneven, their timing imperfect, but there was something so pure in that sound that my eyes stung. It wasn't just music. It was life, spilling back into a place that had once echoed with silence. When they left, I sat alone at the piano, tracing the edge of the keys with my fingertips. My reflection shimmered faintly in the polished wood. The same woman, but not the same soul. The phone buzzed again. A message from Mom. "Family dinner tonight. 7 p.m. Please come." No explanations. No promises. Just that. I stared at the screen for a long minute, the words looking heavier than they should. It had been months since I'd stepped into that house. Months since that night when everything inside me cracked open. But Grandma once told me, "Peace isn't the absence of storms, Ray. It's learning to walk through them without losing yourself." So I got dressed. By the time I reached the house, the rain had stopped. The sky had turned that strange in-between color, not day, not night, the kind of light that makes old memories breathe again. The front door was already open. Inside, laughter drifted from the dining room. I paused at the threshold, my heart beat quick and uneven. Mom looked up first. Her eyes softened the second she saw me. "You came." Daniel smiled faintly from his seat, tapping his glass with the back of his spoon. "Hey sis." I nodded, unsure where to start, or if words were even needed. The table looked the same, the polished wood, the floral centerpiece, the old silver candlesticks Grandma used to polish every Sunday. But there was something else here now. A stillness that wasn't tense, but healing. Dinner began with hesitant small talk, the kind that dances around old wounds. But then Daniel laughed, genuinely, and Mom joined in, and slowly conversation began to flow like it used to, minus the sharp edges. Halfway through, Mom reached under the table and handed me a small envelope. "Found this in Grandma's sewing box last week. It's addressed to you." My breath caught. The handwriting, familiar, looping, strong. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single line written in blue ink. When you finally find peace, share it quietly. That's how victory sounds. I looked up. No one said anything, but Mom's eyes glistened. Daniel nodded slightly, as if Grandma had spoken to all of us at once. That night, after dinner, I walked into Grandma's old garden, the one behind the house, still full of her roses and ivy-covered fences. I could almost see her silhouette near the bench, pruning away the dead stems while humming under her breath. Mom followed me outside, holding 2 cups of tea. She handed me one, the steam curling into the cool air. She used to sit here for hours, Mom said quietly. I never understood what she saw in this old garden. She saw peace, I said, and maybe a bit of herself. Mom smiled faintly, eyes tracing the flowers. I didn't treat her right in the end. Or you. The words hung there, fragile but real. I know, I whispered. But maybe that's not what matters now. She nodded, her voice barely audible. I'm proud of you, Ray. It was simple, but it felt like a door finally opening after years of being locked. Days became weeks again, and something subtle shifted between us all. We started meeting every Sunday, not out of obligation, but choice. The dinners were imperfect, sometimes quiet, sometimes loud, but they were real. Daniel helped me set up a small music corner in the local community center. We called it Rose's Room, a space for anyone who wanted to learn or just sit and listen. Within a month, the room filled with laughter, out-of-tune songs, and the soft sound of second chances. One evening after class, I found a young girl waiting near the piano. She couldn't have been more than 12, holding a tattered sheet of paper. Can you teach me this? She asked shyly. I glanced at the song. It was Home, the same melody Grandma used to hum. Where did you get this? She smiled. It was in the back of that old songbook over there. Someone wrote it by hand. I looked closer, and my breath caught. Grandma's handwriting again. Faded, but there. The girl began playing the first few notes, her fingers trembling but sure. I guided her gently, smiling through the sting in my chest. It felt like Grandma was there again. Not as a ghost, but as a legacy, stitched quietly into the rhythm of ordinary life. A few days later, a letter arrived from the local paper. They'd heard about Rose's Room and wanted to do a short feature. I almost said no. Publicity felt too loud for something so sacred, but then I remembered Grandma's line. Share it quietly. So I agreed. The article ran a week later. The headline read, Healing Through Harmony. How one woman turned grief into music. It wasn't fame. It wasn't money. But seeing her name, Rose, printed there in black ink felt like a small, quiet victory. Mom cut out the article and framed it in her kitchen. Daniel brought over new potted marigolds from my porch. And I kept teaching. One evening, while locking up Rose's room, I noticed an elderly man sitting on the bench outside. His posture was stiff, his clothes neat, the kind of man who looked like he didn't belong in a place that smelled of chalk and piano polish. You're Raelynn? He asked when I approached. Yes. He smiled softly. I was your grandmother's neighbor. She used to play piano in the evenings. I'd sit by the window and listen. Never spoke to her much, but she made the street feel alive. I swallowed hard. She did that everywhere she went. He nodded, reaching into his coat pocket. She once gave me this. Said I'd know when to return it. He handed me a small silver locket. Inside was a tiny photo of her younger self, radiant, laughing, free. On the back, engraved in delicate script, were the words, To live in silence is not to disappear, it's to listen deeper. My eyes burned as I clutched it. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded once and walked away, fading into the dim streetlight. I held the locket against my chest and closed my eyes. Silence again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full. As seasons shifted, so did I. The house no longer echoed with ghosts of the past. It hummed with soft music, the sound of children laughing, and the occasional creak of the piano bench as I played long after sunset. Mom started helping at the community center, organizing, cleaning, sometimes even baking cookies for the kids. Daniel began writing music again. He'd send me voice notes late at night, unfinished melodies asking for my thoughts. We never talked about the inheritance or the fights. We didn't need to. Some truths once faced don't need revisiting. One night, after everyone had gone home, I stayed behind in Rose's room. The lights were dim, the air thick with that end-of-day quiet. I sat at the piano and began to play. Not one of Grandma's songs this time, but mine. A melody built from everything I'd learned: pain, forgiveness, laughter, loss. Halfway through, I felt tears slip down my cheeks. Not from sadness, from gratitude. I wasn't playing for anyone. Not for approval, not for love, not for closure. I was playing because I could. And that was victory. Later that night, I stood outside beneath the stars, the silver locket warm in my hand. The breeze carried faint hints of jasmine and rain. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed once, twice, and then faded into the dark. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I did it, Grandma." And though no sound came back, the quiet that followed wrapped around me like a soft blanket. It wasn't triumph in the loud sense. There were no applause, no cheers, no one to witness the end of the storm. But it was peace, deep earned and infinite. That was the victory she'd meant. The silent kind. The next morning, I pinned her locket on the wall beside the piano, not as a relic, but as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the greatest battles are won not through noise or defiance, but through stillness. Life went on, messy, beautiful, imperfect, and I carried her words in every note, every breath, every quiet moment that followed. Because silence, when you finally understand it, isn't the absence of sound. It's the sound of truth settling into place. And that was my victory. The silent one.